Good evening. It's June 23rd, 2025, and I welcome you to our discussion today. And I want to ask you if there are questions in reference to the last couple of days. I understand that you have been talking about a very important subject. Not that other things are not important, but this about mental illness is something that we don't um, we don't usually talk about. And there are so many people who see it as a stigma as opposed to as health health issue. So if there are questions or comments in reference to or anything that's been said in that regard, please raise them now or make those statements.
This is
Okay.
Charles.
Uh-huh.
I think that we have a group that some things can be poured out so you can be free from them, so that you can work toward freedom from it. And I thank the group that they have comments to tell everyone. And I thank God for everyone that's being brothers and sisters as a family in this group, and being mothers and fathers in this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for your for what you just said. And again, I appreciate this group for for you being able to be open like that and being comfortable with it. Is there anyone else? Would someone please pick up for me? My HVAC guy just pulled in. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is GC, and as we had our conversation yesterday, I know that we had talked about maybe looking at a way where we can deal with mental without using the word illness. And I was just trying to give some thought, in terms of what would be something that we can say or state. And again, I'm open to other, thoughts or different people perspective, but I was thinking about mental awareness or mindfulness, or looking at another term in terms of what we may feel would be something that would not necessarily say mental illness, but still dealing with the mindfulness or the mental awareness of our situations and circumstances, if that makes any sense or resonate with anyone.
This is Vermel. This is just my thought on that. At work, we use mental health, but I like mental awareness. At work, we define it as anything that runs from anxiety to the psychotic because it's such a breadth. But I like mental awareness. So I'm going to cast a vote for that term.
Okay, I appreciate your comments, Ramel, and anyone else. And again, we're just, really appreciating the creators that we are in that way, where we can define it, from a perspective of us being conscious about, the words that we speak or say in a way that we are trying to change that mindset. So are there anyone else that might have a thought or a comment regarding that question?
I just want to make a statement. I think
Mm.
it's interesting when people who are not physically fit, they may call them deconditioned, or they don't call it physical illness. So I think it's very strange or bizarre that we call it mental illness, because we also have to think about the physical, the spiritual, and all the other aspects that we take care of, but nobody really calls the other aspects illness. Or am I misreading that? Over.
No, I think that's a good point, Mara, and I think this is where again it's important that we can look at this in terms of a holistic way of identifying or coming up with what we feel to be means of illness. And so, as you say, not just the mental awareness or the mental health as Vermel stated, but at the same time, she cast a vote in terms of looking at, mental awareness. And so Ron and Pastor, we were just speaking on the subject yesterday where someone mentioned that, the word mental illness is something that we may need to give thought to or consider another way that we can speak about it. So we were kind of putting that out as a question, what would be a way that we can maybe say mental awareness or mental health or whatever thoughts anyone else may have, where we don't have to look at it in that mindset of illness, if that resonates again with anyone. But that was the question, Ron and Pastor and Audrey.
Well,
I'm done.
we say physical fitness. Why can't we say mental fitness?
I think I can agree with everything that's being said, but let's think about this for a moment. Are we playing into astigmatism?
Say
I
that
mean,
again?
Are we playing into, we've been stigmatized by mental health, right? So if your mind, if your mind is ill, then it's ill, just like your body is ill. If something is going wrong with it, that's out of the ordinary. And what we call it mental fitness, mental illness, mental health, the stigma is still there. I think it's more important to deal with the issue than how we label it. It's just that simple. And I think the reason that we find it, I think, uncomfortable with mental illness is because the stigma that has been attached to it. And I don't mind telling anyone that I have a mental illness, and I do feel like a great part of my dealing with the last couple of days may very well been a part of that. I don't mind saying that I have a counselor and a psychiatrist. I have therapists, and I'm not. At one point, I was very uncomfortable with that, but I'm not uncomfortable with that anymore. And why? I'm not uncomfortable with it because it's real. And as long as I'm in denial about it, or I am ashamed of it, it makes it worse because I'm trying to hide something that I need help with. And I think the discussion, from what I've understood for the last couple of days, have been people talking about what they're dealing with, as opposed to being uncomfortable with what is called. However, my deference would be to those who are in the area of counseling about whether or not it would be called mental illness or mental health or whatever it is called. So I defer to people deal with this, have dealt with it or deal with it on a regular basis. So I would be interested in hearing what you have to say about what we call it.
I guess, and I apologize for being late, y'all. Well, anyway, but I apologize for being a little late. Is it an illness though if everybody who has ever come from the womb has it? Can everybody be sick? So I think it's a norm that we don't know what to do with. It's something, it's a part of our development that we've never really challenged before because we are too busy trying to pretend that, it's or hide it from each other and not talk about it so much. But I think everybody has some type of anxiety that they're dealing with. So if it happens to everyone, maybe it's something we're supposed to develop along the way.
I want to ask, you made a statement of all of us are born with it. It's an illness. I don't think any of us are born with it. I think it's something that's developed environmentally. And I don't have a working, for lack of a better term, definition or explanation of mental illness or mental health problems, however you want to term it. However, I do know that there are periods when I'm out of sorts and when I can't seem to pull my thoughts together or pull myself together, to be honest with you, and I need help in doing that, and I don't have no problem with that. However, the question becomes the this idea of mental illness, or we talk about mental trauma. We talk about the emotional trauma that we've had for 400 plus years, 500 years. That is also the same thing. We just call it, we just label it a different way. So both of those are the same thing. Now were we born with emotional trauma that was from enslavement? No, we weren't. That was inflicted, and it was reinforced over the years, and it's continued to be reinforced. So I'm really wanting, asking you to help us with this. Um, I don't see, I see Kathy's on, I don't know if Monique is on, or someone else who deals in this area of counseling who could probably help us with this.
I think the comment that the reason we're having this discussion is because when we ended yesterday, Monique made the comment that we need to, and I'm paraphrasing what she said, also to get away from the stigma of saying mentally ill and saying it is your mental health. And when she said that, I thought about in terms of how when you've had enough of work and you just need a break, you call in, you don't have to be physically sick. You say, I'm taking a mental health day. And I remember there were times when, I remember when that became an acceptable reason to call in sick on my job, where they would say, okay, you need a mental health day, fine. And it used to be that people were hiding that and just trying to make up, well, I have a cold today or I got a headache or something. And so I know that that was something that Monique ended with, and I regret that she's not on. I just know that terminologies in the mental health field, as we all know, and like I've been saying, you've heard me say, or they've heard me say for the past few days, textbook definitions and textbook understanding are things that we are moving more away from and moving more into spiritual understanding of things. And so when she said that yesterday, it did resonate. But when you said what you said about, is it so important to have a term for it, as opposed to how, I don't really know how you said it just now, because I'm doing 12 things at one time while I'm listening. But it may not be so much in what's in a name, but we have discussed that yesterday. But I know textbook definitions, they come up with all the buzzwords and the terminology for how they are going to diagnose something, be it for the term of insurance or be it for the term of just having an identifier to say, this is because if you look at mental illness, mental health, mental acuity, any of those things that you're looking at is such a large umbrella and such a catch-all for so many different things. I think those are terms that have been put in the macro because the powers that be have termed it as being these things. So I guess I'll say all of that to say, maybe we're talking about this because we are changing the dynamics of what has been into something that needs to be different. And so I'm not going to say there's a right or a wrong at this point, because I'm not saying it is a right or wrong. I'm saying that maybe the whole purpose of this conversation is because it is time to see it differently and put it in the macro, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does.
Maybe the word illness came about so that when some European teenager commits a crime, we can say that he's ill, and we're gonna put him away for a while in a hospital. And if he's ill, we can make him better. Because illness is not a permanent thing in most cases. So it is one of those catchphrases that is used for convenience.
I
May I
do,
make a comment? I yield.
go ahead. I'll do it in a moment.
Well, I was gonna say, this mental illness, what we're talking about, it is what it is. It's a sickness. And to me, it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like we try to come up with words to change things in the macro, but with mental sickness, I say, which is illness, it is what it is. And it's like you trying to put a dress on a pig and not call it a pig. Well, it's still gonna be a pig. I don't know what word we can come up with because, again, and I don't want to be redundant, keep saying the same thing over, it's a sickness. It's something that we all need to be healed from. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And no, go nothing.
Yeah, again, I think there's variations in terms of what we all may deal with. I can only speak of it in terms of my own personal experience, working, in social service and working with the colleagues that I worked with. And I know that it came a point in time where we all have to work together, and there's challenges in that happening in terms of us working together. And I know it just got to one point where I felt a little anger, and I knew that for myself, I needed to take as Kathy was saying, take a admin day or take, what I mean, a sick day. And actually it was an admin day. But at that particular point, I realized that again, I'm in control of my thoughts, my words, and my actions. And it just kind of made me think about like what you were saying, Evelyn, in terms of how we look at it. I don't know. And again, if it's an illness, is that what we're saying? But I just know I needed time to just step off and do some self-examination to the point where, again, my supervisor, like, if you need to take an admin day or if you need to take some time off. So I'm just, again, looking at it just from my own personal perspective, but what you call it and what it is, it really made me, give some thought to my mindset with regards to what I was experiencing. So I don't know if that make any sense, but I think that for me, I know I needed to step off, you know what I mean, at that moment. And so again, I think we all respond in different ways of how we deal with what we do. And I know for me that if I'm in a situation where I really feel the heat or the pressure or myself maybe getting angered about something, I step off. You know what I mean? Just to be able to collect myself and my thoughts. But that's just I say something that I dealt with in my way, and my way is not everybody else's way. So I just want to share those thoughts. I'm done.
Thank you, George. Let me ask a question. How, why is it important that we find another word, another way of describing it, another label?
This is
Hello, everyone. This is Steph. Oh, how are you?
for me, I think it's to take the stigma out of talking about it, to become more comfortable with talking about it.
How did we take the stigma out of cancer? Because I remember when no one talked about cancer, when it was a stigma. How many of you guys remember that? Do you remember that? I'm sure you do.
I feel like we're still scared to talk about cancer.
That's not true. We talk about cancer now just as openly as we talk about a cold. But I remember when cancer had with it a stigma, and nobody wanted to say they had cancer when they were dying from cancer or when they were living with cancer. Nobody wanted to talk about it. I remember that. And when it comes to this, to mental or emotional issues, the Black community definitely don't want to talk about that, especially Black men in particular, does not want to talk about that. So regardless of what we call it, the actions or the feelings, the emotions are the same that we're dealing with. Whether you call it mental illness or mental health, it doesn't change what I'm dealing with. It does not change what anyone else is dealing with. So I think the cure or the help and the type that is more important than the label. Maybe if we talk about it more, it won't be a stigma. Like cancer is no longer a stigma. And I don't want to really get into a debate on it. However, I do believe that it's necessary to talk about it because it does indeed put it in the macro. And I do believe that the idea of mental health or mental illness has very much to do with the environment that you live in and the interactions that you have or don't have with people. And I also believe, especially those of us who are having these discussions 3 days a week, if there are issues with you mentally and you're uncomfortable talking about them or admitting them to yourself, then the question becomes, are you ready to be honest with yourself? Because you have to at least admit them to yourself. If you're going to find any relief whatsoever. And I readily tell you that I fought it as long as I could. And when I started talking about it and I started dealing with it, then it became something easier, not only for me to speak of, but for me to recover from. Because it used to, at one time, it took me long periods to recover from depths of depression or to recover from from insomnia because I couldn't sleep because there was so much going on inside of me, and it was not so much what I was thinking. It was my mind was almost pretty much blank, but there was a fidgetiness, there was an uneasiness, and I did not know how to address it. However, now I deal with it much better, and I'm more apt to talk with someone when I'm dealing with that. So it's not so to me anyway. For me personally, I have no issues with saying that it's mental illness because my thought processes are ill at times. They are sick at times, and the sickness of it is not the type of sickness when we talk about, oh, he's sick, and he's sick in the head. This is not. Usually, we'll refer to something that's far more encompassing than the emotional things that we're talking about now. I do believe that by addressing them, it helps. Now, I know I'm being redundant in a lot of ways, but I don't know how else to say this, and I'm searching for the words to say what I'm making an attempt to say. But the main thing, I don't want us to get so caught up on what we go call it until we fail to deal with it. Does that make sense?
Most certainly.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think the dealing with it is far more important than what we call it. That's all. And if someone has a different view of that, that's fine. If you have something else that you think more comfortable, that you can call as more comfortable, that's fine also. But I also think that the whole idea of it cannot be compartmentalized, because when we talk about this subject, it affects us in different ways, and it comes from different places with us. So anyway. I don't know what else to say.
Hey, Pastor, this is Charles.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking in Luke 5, verse 31 and 32. I hadn't, it was just little bits and pieces of it. It says, and Jesus answered, and it comes from American Standard. And Jesus answered and said to them, it is not those who are well who need a physical, but those who are sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinner to repent. That's a different type sickness than what we dealing with. We dealing with this situation the way it's been.
I don't think it's a different type, Charles. I don't. Suppose that what we are talking about in terms of mental illness is the results of having adversarial thoughts to who we are as spiritual beings. Suppose that if we are balanced spiritually, then we don't deal with these adversarial emotional issues. You understand what I'm trying to say? Any of you?
Say it one more time.
Suppose that what we call mental illness, or suppose that all of these thoughts or these emotions that brings us to that state are things that are adversarial to the spiritual essence of who we are. And once we become balanced, then we don't have those issues anymore. And what comes to mind is when the Zulu was fighting the British, and they set up the village outside of the main village, so that everyone who was fighting in the war would come through that village. And after they did that, they found that the men who were coming back from war was not violent as they were when they came straight back to the villages. In other words, they had what we call PTSD, and they were more violent when they came back. But when they set up the village for them to have to come through before they went back home, all that changed. So the question is, does spiritual balance deal with this thing that we call mental illness, mental health, or whatever we want to call it? Does that make sense now?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the whole issue is that you're out of balance.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, hello.
I agree.
Hello, everyone. This is Sheldon. I was the one who I think first said something about not saying mental illness, and it wasn't at all had to do with anything in terms of not acknowledging or accepting what was going on. It definitely was, certainly it was the intentions to deal with it and grow through, in a sense, that situation. And I did mention that there was some sort of struggle the reason why I said not to say mental illness was because that is automatically a way. Well, first of all, it is something that is normally in our society called illness. Is not always illness. It is something that someone is struggling with and don't know where to actually put. And much of it is and can be spiritual. So, for example, if someone has a gift of seeing visions, that doesn't fit in our normal society, and then that will automatically look like that person is not thinking correctly, or they have some type of problem. They definitely could be struggling with that. I definitely know when people are like on the streets talking to themselves and things like that, and believe they are seeing sometimes things from the other world and just don't know or have anyone to help them with in terms of where to put that. And so in a sense, yes, you can say there's an illness, but the thing that is taking place is like they're not ready for that at that particular moment. When elderly people start to have Alzheimer's or they're communicating in a different way outside, that too we look at as being an illness, but it's not an illness. It doesn't mean at all that we don't talk about it. It doesn't mean that we don't struggle with those things. It just means that, hey, this is something I am working through or becoming more comfortable with. In the same way, some things can be, basically it's not all just illness. There is some good in a sense. It is some growing in a sense with that as well. It's more so in the way that it is frequently used, generally, more so a generality thing. Quite a few years ago when I came to New York, I was diagnosed with having a learning disability, just saying that I learn differently from others. That also is just a normality issue because there are things that people do on a regular basis that I may struggle to do with because my brain doesn't process it. I don't process things in that way. However, I do not consider myself as having a disability at all because there are other ways that I think in the way that I process where most people cannot do. And in some sense, I may struggle. In another sense, I may, quite frankly, be brilliant, something that's just automatic to me. But that doesn't mean it's a disability. It just means that my strengths lie in another area. I think about how Christianity would have thought or has thought of everyone as having some mental illness, every spiritual person in the past having some mental illness. And yes, it can be very difficult to reconcile those things in our common world being in the West, but it was absolutely the point to deal with that. It wasn't so much to necessarily say I don't have a problem not dealing with anything. It was more so to focus on the working on it, not that I am sick. In the same way when someone is typically dealing with a cold, their body is recalibrating or readjusting, and in some cases we get sick and may have a minor cold, but our body's actually adjusting and creating the antibodies to actually fight something else that's in nature that's a lot stronger in the same way that trees do. So it's just more so I looked at it more so in the way that we learned a while ago, some time ago, about sin, is more so an imbalance or an entanglement is something that is actually being worked through. But the idea of hearing voices or communicating with the ancestors and all of that, I'm not going to say it's the good or the bad, but all of that to some extent in our lives at some point, especially when at least I was extremely religious, I might have thought of that as some type of mental illness when it wasn't the case. Whether I was struggling with understanding and dealing with it and was hesitant to maybe deal with it before, sure. But it's something more and it requires work, but not at all to move away from it. But not making an argument. I was just more so going in depth in terms of what I meant and not just to shun everything that we're considering illness because it's not actually bad. It's a part of who we are and it's a part of our growth. I'm finished.
Thank you, Sheldon.
Thank you. Let me ask this question. You said yes about the about spirituality. Could we be having this discussion? Because it needs to be put in the macro, because this is one of the major steps that has, that step is of course used loosely, that we have to deal with in order for us to truly be balanced.
I can say that I believe so, and I can say also that this thing that we also we do that through ourselves, or we are doing that through ourselves. In terms of us reclaiming and getting closer to our roots and accepting things and doing the work, we are determining what is what. We're not allowing others anymore to tell us that things are bad or they don't fit in this box of Christianity or where our powers lie, et cetera. We are, in a sense, we're not asking anyone, we're doing that ourselves, and that's where our desires actually lie.
So you're saying that we freeing our own self from the damage that's been put up on us.
Say that one more time, Charles.
You were saying that we is freeing our own self, or ourself, because of the damage that was been put up on us.
Yes, and I'm by no means, I'm not saying, like Pastor Richard just said earlier, that I'm not denying anything happened, not denying that we have struggled with anything, and even to this day struggle with anything. I too actually, well, for starting this year, the past few months, and going to therapy every week and working through things. The thing is it empowering to us to not. A lot of the stuff that we brought with us, in a sense, has been beat out of us, and we've been told it's been bad. Our roots, we are dealing with that right now. And it is up to us, and it is for us to also, like it was said, very important for us to acknowledge where we are and just don't say, oh, okay, I'm all right, and just ignore certain things. That is very important. That's the first part. But the other part is to, okay, where do I go with this? I just don't say that this is automatically bad. I am struggling through something. I am, my desire for all of those who know me and know me even better than myself, my ancestors, that help me and to guide me with this also. And in a sense, to actually face it on and do it, try his best to do it fearlessly.
That's almost like what Monique was saying, that when I had asked her about cleaning the house, if you're helping that person cleaning the house, then you have to be mindful of doing it spiritual, helping him to replace the furniture in the house in the way that it won't come back worse, or it won't come back that what all you did was in vain.
I absolutely agree. That is definitely something that takes place on a regular basis with therapy and greater understanding of ourselves.
Thank you.
So this spiritual approach that we're talking about, the balance is the thing that frees us from our all the things that has hampered us or hindered us along the way, emotionally and every other way. Hello?
Say
Yes.
it again, Pastor.
Oh, yes.
So we're saying that what we are doing spiritually frees us from all the things that hampered us, emotionally and otherwise.
Okay, I got you.
Yes, again.
And isn't that how we save ourselves?
It has to be. It has to be.
I would say it goes beyond saving ourselves. I would say it goes in us to being and doing what it is that we're here to do. And when I say that is, and I am picking at the word, but I am picking at the word for a reason. I'm picking at the word to take us beyond save. I am saying that we go beyond just saving. We go into thriving and enriching, in a sense, and flourishing, not only for ourselves, but for others. But yes, that is one of the steps.
So a sickness is it. Let me say that, and you can go ahead. The sickness is out of balance. That's the way I see it.
That's true.
And even out of that, which is out of balance, comes growth. And so that's the part where it's not just surviving it in a sense. We're not, as was said, we're not even, by putting this in the macro, we're not doing this even just for ourselves. We're doing this for ourselves on this line. We're doing it for ourselves as in Africans. We're also doing it for others to set a way for them also, as it was talking about, and putting it in the macro. We're literally, as they say, world changers, if you want to look at it in that aspect. But the goal is not just to be saved. The goal is to flourish and thrive. But again,
So you're right, because if you're free, you can accomplish anything.
and I want to reiterate, I'm not. My intentions are not just to use flowery language. My intention is all of in terms of that idea of shooting for the stars and hitting the moon, which I'm not even trying to fall short. But the point is a lot of work and effort to go into it. The point is to move, unwind in a sense, do the work, which all of us are interested in doing. That's why we're here. Definitely get over the stigma, if there's any stigma.
And may I add a thought to what you're saying too, Sheldon? As we're discussing this, and I guess I'm listening, and you're basically saying, well, everyone heard what you basically said, but I guess too, what I would like to add is when I look at us and I look at what we're learning, and be it mental illness or anything else that we are dealing with, there's a saying that tells the doctor, physician, heal thyself. And in my opinion, what makes that doctor qualified to heal himself or herself or whatever the case may be is based on the knowledge that they have acquired in that instance, in what they are supposed to understand medically. Well, if I am the physician who is healing myself, it's based on the knowledge that I have acquired spiritually about who I am. And that thing that we are calling balance that we're seeking, that thing brings about healing. So I become the physician that is healing myself spiritually, because now I understand spiritual things. And as a result of the healing taking place in me, it puts me in a place of equilibrium and balance, which is what we're seeking spiritually. So I think we're all saying the same thing. I just wanted to add that because we have that ability to look inside ourselves, and what everybody is describing and what we've been saying, the knowledge of who we are understanding and who we are and working within those parameters, even if we're seeking to work with therapists outside of our own selves. On the inside, there's a core balance and beliefs and a set of beliefs that we have in us, and that's the springboard from which we work toward what we call this thing called the state of balance. And we have the ability, hand in hand, to make those changes, to do the work, to achieve this place of balance that we are seeking. But like I've been saying all along, I see it so much clearer now from a standpoint of spirituality, instead of just knowing the textbook definition of what you call me and what I'm calling myself and what that's supposed to mean, and how I'm to move about it, and just, I guess, process throughout this world the things and the experiences that I've had. There's that innate ability in me to heal from those things. And so I just wanted to add that layer to the conversation as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
I understand now that's the reason we as this family were learning how to forgive others right along with yourself, so we can be free enough to do what we was created to do, or what we were born to do.
Yeah, because without forgiveness, you can't do it.
Audrey, were you going to speak earlier?
What'd you say, Ron?
I was asking Audrey, was she wanting to speak earlier?
No, I said what I needed.
Okay.
Thanks.
Does all this make sense within the parameters of what we're talking about?
It does.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this or have a question about anything else? Or a comment for that matter?
Pastor, I hadn't went through my phone to look at where the scripture says when your father won't give you if he was hungry or wanting food, he would not give you a rock, or he give a gift, he wouldn't give you a serpent.
Yeah, if you
Say
have
it again.
I'll give you a stone.
Yeah.
I don't know, Charles. You have to ask someone else. Anyone knows where that scripture is found? I think it's in Matthew. What father, if his child asks him for a fish, will give him a serpent, or ask him for bread, and he will give him a stone?
I agree. I think it's in Matthew, but other than that,
It says Matthew 7, 9 through 11.
Thank you.
I didn't read out this group with it.
I think it's in Matthew 7,
Yeah,
9 through 11. I don't need to read it, do I?
No, we got it. What are you asking about it?
I'm thinking love is dealing with that. That was the reason I asked. Like they say, love covers a multitude of stuff. I'm thinking love is in the mix of that.
That particular scripture is talking about what more your father would do for you. If an earthly father does not give his child a stone when he asks for bread, what more will your father in heaven do for you? That's what that's talking about. So it's actually talking about what the Creator would do in regards to our needs or our desires.
Well, I don't know. It must be just me. I forget.
About what?
I'm still feeling that his love for us, that he would do, great things. What I'm seeing in there, he doing it out of his love for you.
Yes, all of it is based on love. Yes. Because you will give your child bread instead of stone because you love the child, right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, based on where we are, what we're talking about here, I mentioned something earlier when I was talking to Pastor about this. Does our mental state have anything to do with what we desire? If we were to find contentment in life totally, would we be out of balance?
Depends on what made you content. What do you think? Because some people are content with being greedy.
Okay.
Ron, that was a good question. I hadn't thought in that form the way you put it.
Yeah, I guess that's what makes me think that there's no one who has balance. That's what we're seeking. So I like that better than what we were. Uh, I think balance includes what we're doing. It's not getting an education. It's not getting the perfect job. It's not having wellness and never getting ill. Balance has to do with knowing, understanding who you are, and seeing yourself in relationship with the Creator, and appreciation for mankind. And I don't know, I'm kind of rambling now, but I'm just thinking about that. And anyway, let me think about it some more.
Do you think balance is possible, Ron?
Most definitely. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be here.
I'm talking about a continuous state of balance.
Yes, I do.
Okay. The reason I ask that is because when you talk about When I say a continuous state of balance, I'm talking about without any interference from the environment that we encounter now. Where you're great, and then all of a sudden something happens, and it takes you off kilter for a moment. You see what I'm saying?
And Pastor, that may be part of it. That's certainly possible, but that's where we all come in. That's where the love and compassion comes in, and the oneness. But yeah, I think balance is possible, but I also think that there is if we're balanced, uh, and I hope I'm saying the same thing. If the people on this phone achieve balance, we can't maintain it 100% if the rest of the world remains out of balance. Because balance says that you have love and compassion and forgiveness, and there's gonna be things that challenge you, for lack of a better way of saying it, another way of saying it, I guess.
So we're always going to face challenges, right?
I would say so, yes.
Yeah. There's always work to be done. Even when we look at the scriptures and talk about deliverance. That whole concept that when we talk about completion, we talk about perfection, we're not talking about without blemish, right?
Right.
We're talking about having that blemish, but knowing how to deal with it. We're talking about overcoming it. We're talking about it not being the motivating force in our life, but we recognize it and we deal with it in such a way that it does not become a permanent fixture in our lives as it has been in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I have a question, Pastor Ron. So is being balanced a form of you feeling, it's like you're experiencing heaven? And I'm not talking about the one that we were told the streets paved with gold, or none of that. None of that. I'm talking about you're experiencing you in this particular place, and you know that there are things that's going on around you, but it doesn't affect your peace or your balance, so to speak. So that's my question.
I not only think it is a pursuit of self, it is also a helping others that helps us achieve that. I think that's all a part of it. In fact, I think the more you share who you are, that is also a way of balancing yourself. So looking at your question, Evelyn, and not thinking about it as something Ron does for Ron, achieving balance is reaching out to mankind as I take steps to find Ron. I share that light with the world, or the world that I'm around. I don't know if I'm making sense or not, but it's more than it's recognizing that spiritual light that you have found in yourself is in every person, and finding a way. And that's what I think that's what we call the macro. Putting it in the macro is reaching that spiritual light for all of mankind to share, to see, if he has or desires the opportunity. So I agree with you. I think this concept of heaven and hell is right here. It's a mental state right here on earth. That's my thoughts anyway.
I agree with that assessment. It is hard that there is no place to go that is called heaven, as we have been taught. And uh, I don't think that we would even recognize what balance is if we were not concerned about humanity um, being balanced itself, or if we were not concerned about the plight of humanity. If we only wanted balance so that we can say that we are something different or that we are better off, then it's not available to us because it's for selfish reasons. Does that make sense so far?
Yes,
So
exactly.
this is not one of those I'm blessed and high favor in the Lord type things. This is something that this is an endeavor that we embark on because we do have a love for humanity. It's something we embark on because we recognize the divinity that we were born with. Um, it is something that we hold on to because we realize without it, there is no hope for mankind, and there is no hope for change. There is no hope for the continuation of life in this earth without there being a desire to bring humanity to a place of awareness. And that awareness that I'm talking about is not aware so much of what's around us, but a place of self-awareness. Being aware of self, meaning being aware of who you are. Now, the question becomes, if you simply because you're aware of who you are, will it change you? Well, that is up to you. But I do believe that we are obligated to, at the very least, to make sure that our efforts are are geared toward making humanity aware of itself in terms of spirituality, in terms of divinity. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Does.
Yes.
Thank you, Ron. Yes.
Thank you, dear. And anything that deviates from that um, leaves us in a quandary. It leaves us in a space where we are still searching to make every effort to understand who we are. If we don't use it for the benefit of humanity itself, because nothing we learn, nothing we are given is simply for us alone, because we are not alone. If I'm you and you are me, then everything that I receive is for you also. Everything that I understand is for you. Everything I receive from the ancestors is for you as well. And this is what puts us in a place where we begin to see the principle of one yet many. It also puts us in a place where we are more able um, to see or to experience, rather, maybe that's a better word, the spiritual essence of us. And if we did not have these ups and downs in our lives, or these emotional issues in our lives, then would we ever know that when we are balanced? If you have nothing to compare it to, it's like, how do you determine what's good if there's nothing that's not good? Does that make,
Yeah.
So it, and I do believe that the majority of what we go through, the majority of things that we deal with, the majority of things that we face, we face them for the purpose of showing us um, those things that we need to deal with. And when we deal with them, we're not just dealing with them for us, but that's also put in the macro. See, I don't want us to think that the things that we put in the macro are the things that we discussed on these 3 days. But even when we are talking to each other or talking to someone else, the universe is listening, you know? So you can't you can't talk when we are together about these things that are glorious for humanity, and then when you're off, your whole life is something different. When we're not, together, talking about these things and bringing them to light, you can't do that with the expectation of anything changing in your life, or you be having the experiences that you say that you desire to have. Why? Because whether you are on this line 3 days a week or whether you are never on it, the universe is still listening. Does that make sense? Everything we say, the
Yeah.
universe is listening. And guess what? If the universe is listening, it is also responding. And we've talked about years ago about sending mixed messages to the universe. And and that is something I think that we should be cognizant of. It's we are in a good place in terms of the search that we've embarked on for so many years. And I do believe that we are seeing these things that are developing around the world right now, because order comes from chaos. And sometimes I think that we believe, or we don't think beyond the borders of this country when we talk about the chaos and all the isms that we have to deal with, and the reversal that needs to take place when it comes to the damage done to the earth and humanity. I think sometimes that we don't think beyond the borders of this country. When we look at the chaos in this country, this same chaos has to be worldwide because the problem is worldwide. So the uprooting of it will be a global thing. And when we look at the idea of what's happening, for example, we look at what's happening in Iran and between Iran and Israel and the U.S. now. Keep in mind also that the people in Iran don't see us any differently than Europeans see us. So there's an upheaval that has to take place in every nook and cranny of this earth, because of the attitude of those who are in charge, because the authorities that the authority that now is being exerted over mankind is a type of authority that carries the same negative or the same energy of domination and greed that it does in this country. That's a worldwide thing, and it's not simply um, towards those who are of European descent. It's also of those who are Chinese or African or whatever. If that attitude, if that energy is the same, then it's the same problem. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
So we have to deal
Yes.
with it. It's a global issue.
And thanks for saying that, Rev. Come, everybody be thinking the European. We've been and we've been in group with the Europeans so long that a lot of us, doing and saying the same thing the Europeans are saying. I mean, the black, the yellow, the Chinese, like you just said.
But see, this is the thing. When we have to stop seeing people when we say European, and start experiencing mindsets, thought patterns, actions, as opposed to seeing people. Because whether it doesn't matter whether the Chinese or Nigerian, if your mindset is the same as those who are the oppressor, then you are an oppressor too. There's no difference in that. So this upheaval is not just endemic to America. This upheaval is global, as I said earlier. And we have to begin to process in that manner, excuse me, so that we can begin to see the results of our desires. I'm done, unless there are questions or comments. All right.
Yeah, I sort of have a question, but I don't know what it is yet. Don't quite know where I am right now, but that's okay. It'll come to me. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Okay. Maybe maybe it's a good place to ponder what we've discussed the last 3 days and resume Saturday. Is that okay? Everybody okay with that? Any last comments? Okay. Hey guys, stay hydrated, okay? It's pretty warm these days. Gonna be like that all week here in South Carolina anyway.
Yeah.
You guys stay hydrated and have a great week.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Well,
everyone. Have a great week.
Great day. I mean, great week.
Great week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.